Since my childhood, people have always commented and inquired about the thickness and beauty of my blonde hair. In response to these compliments, I almost always reply, "It's my Swedish roots." Until recently, though, my knowledge about my Swedish heritage was extremely limited. Before, I only knew that my Swedish genes came from my father's side of the family, who had originally moved from Småland, Sweden, to the United States. However, my limited understanding of my family's history changed when my dad and I went on a backpacking trip through Wyoming's Wind River Range. One of the nights when my dad and I were sitting by the fire, I asked him, "I know that our family comes from Sweden, but exactly how did we get here?" Fortunately, my dad hadn't been as ignorant as I when it came to our family history. That night, my father described to me that our family's history began in one of the larger southern provinces of Sweden called Småland. This province is world famous for her crystal glass industry and is therefore called the Kingdom of Crystal. Within this crystal glass region of Sweden, my great-grandfather Carl Broman was born. At the young age of 12 years old, my great-grandpa Carl Broman and his younger sister became orphans as the result of the onset of tuberculosis in the early 1900s. With all other living relatives already departed to live in America, my great-grandpa Broman and his sister had no other ties within their Swedish homeland. When the news of her sister and her brother-in-law's death reached my great-grandpa Broman's aunt, she arranged for him and his sister to come join her and her family in Minnesota. In the meantime, while the travel arrangements were being made, the owners of the crystal glass factory that Broman worked for took pity on my great-grandfather and his sister and kindly provided them with food and a roof over their head until the date of their departure. Nearly 1 year later, my great-grandpa Broman was 14, and he and his sister were ready to make the journey across the Atlantic to the United States. Before their departure, the kind owners of the crystal glass factory generously packed a trunk full of Småland's world-famous crystal glass, which was to be sold by my great-grandpa Broman to start off his new life in America. In 1908, my 14-year-old great-grandpa Carl Broman and his sister boarded a small immigrant ship with their few belongings in the trunk full of crystal. At some point during their 40-day journey, the trunk was stolen. Even though my great-grandfather Broman frantically searched the boat for the stolen trunk, he was never to see it again. Thus, he, like so many other immigrants arriving in America in 1908, underwent inspection at New York's infamous Ellis Island with next to nothing to his name. From New York, my great-grandpa Broman and his sister went straight into the small farming community in Minnesota to join his aunt and her family. Here he was raised in the ways of farming, a far cry from his crystal glass job in Småland. As my great-grandfather Broman established himself in Minnesota, he was fortunate enough to meet my great-grandmother, who was also Swedish. The two got married and started their own family, which has subsequently led to my birth many years after Broman's journey. It is from my great-grandfather Broman's struggle to find his way after the unexpected death of his parents that allowed my family to establish themselves here in America. This is a heritage that I am extremely proud of. For one, it gives a new dimension to defining the successes and failures that my family has experienced in America. And secondly, although my family does not possess any of the crystal glass that my great-grandfather Broman was supposed to use to get a head start in America, we do have that thick blonde hair that has been passed down in our genes and is the source of many greatly appreciated compliments.